Panzer Dragoon Zwei. A game this compact, with such tightly focused, highly refined, on-rails shooter gameplay, has absolutely no right to have such an entrancing story and such an epic, bewitching game world. Why am I starting with the second game in the series? Well, because it's the first game in the series I played back in the day, and I still think, of the titles on the Sega Saturn, it's the tightest overall package, displaying a mastery of the Sega Saturn's unique, complex hardware, highly astute world building and storytelling, mesmerizing art design, and flawless on-rails shooter gameplay. For what it sets out to achieve, it's basically a perfect video game, and one that I've revisited many times since its 1996 release. Here's issue 4 of the official UK Sega Saturn magazine. This is where I first became aware of Panzer Dragoon. The coverage here really piqued my interest. Back in those pre-internet days, magazines were a massively important part of spreading news and hype amongst gamers, along with quaint concepts like TV commercials and plain old word of mouth. I remember poring over images and hyperbole in C&VG, Edge, and the official PlayStation and Saturn magazines back in those days, and getting far too excited by news and images of upcoming games, and also too wrapped up in the often bitter exchanges between rival console owners. It may well be the crazy, misty-eyed ramblings of a senior gamer, but I can honestly say that I genuinely miss those days, and not everything has changed for the better. Anywho, my brother picked this game up largely on the strength of the magazine coverage in the early stages of his Sega Saturn ownership, and we were confused, fascinated, and addicted by it in equal measure. Although I have to admit, I still have a fondness for them. It was a huge leap over the 32X and Mega CD games we'd been playing until recently, with their Roma Mosaic FMV or Serial Box Polygon based games. The 3D here was far smoother, more sophisticated, and texture mapped, and the overall production values blew the previous generation clear out of the water. We played this game around the same time as early-ish PS1 games like Wipeout and Wing Commander 3, and we were similarly amazed. In retrospect, in all my 30 odd years of gaming, the mid to late 90s was the most exciting era of video gaming, with each new console bringing with it a huge leap in power, and whole new trends and genres being established before your very eyes. While the PlayStation, Saturn and PC dived into a vast, unexplored ocean of 3D polygonal graphics, the monolithic shadow of Nintendo's Ultra 64 and new 3D installments of Mario and Zelda loomed large. At the time of its release, this game could only be achieved on Sega Saturn. Effects such as the famous infinite planes and the uncanny rippling water effects were simply not possible on Sony's PlayStation, and the whole game ran at a very fluid, for its day, 30 frames per second. In fact, it made the original look like a tech demo, which admittedly, in some ways it was. This mesmerizing world is filled with bizarre insectoid creatures, iridescent colours, and bizarre bone-like textures. Much of it appears neither natural nor synthetic, and this also applies to the hypnotic, magnificent music, by accident or design, which is more abstract than that of the first game, and in my opinion, a better fit for the strange, desaturated world of bioengineered drones, genetic mutants, and lost, technologically advanced civilizations. Spectacular berserk attacks, equivalent to the bombs from many a traditional 2D shoot-'em-up, are incredibly satisfying and add a layer of strategy and spectacle to the proceedings. The difficulty level is perfectly pitched. The latter stages always feel breathlessly challenging, but are always within your power to complete. The spectacular final boss in particular never fails to be an intense, nail-biting thrill ride. There's a tangible confidence to this game, as it flows from spectacular set-piece to silent, ethereal landscape to a bleak FMV with all the grace and power of its blue-armoured dragon. It's the confidence of a development team with a truly inspired vision, and both the skill and the brass balls to execute it. This game does a fantastic job of giving an impression of a living, breathing landscape going on beyond the visible limits of the game world. The player has a very narrow, restricted perspective on this world. We are given snippets of information here and there, and we see legions of magnificent creatures, strange prophetic visions, fantastical landscapes, and hints of a lost, ancient civilization with little or no exposition. It's almost as though you're peeping into this ethereal and deadly world through a keyhole and are trying desperately to glean whatever information you can. What little we do see is so fascinating that as a consequence, 1,000 questions form. The brain attempts to fill in the gaps, and thus the imagination is stirred. Often, when too much information is given to us, when everything about a world is explained, when we're able to hit the inevitable invisible walls on its outer edges, it can have the paradoxical effect of making the world feel small. When things are left to the imagination, we're presented with limitless possibilities. The muscle and key of the imagination are stirred, and the audience is engaged. What we imagine is often more engaging than what's shown to us. Some things are simply best left there.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
It's a delicate balancing act between stirring an audience's imagination and coming off as willfully oblique, artsy bollocks. And Zwei pulls it off magnificently. The world of Panzer Dragoon is a boundless frontierland, ageless, weightless, bottomless, simultaneously futuristic and ancient. It's a trick Star Wars pulled off so well, in the pre-prequel era at least. We see magnificent sights, and we hear of far-off places and events taking place eons in the past, but we don't actually see them. As some wise old geezer once said, the thrill is in the chase, not the kill. Along with games like Nights into Dreams and the later Shenmue series, the Panzer Dragoon games are a high watermark of Sega's quixotic, wildly imaginative spirit of the mid to late 90s. These were games that set out to astonish people, but unfortunately, although they received positive reviews, the mass market was more confused than anything else, and much like Panzer Dragoon's lost ancient civilization, this most fanatically creative era of Sega's history was largely swept away by the sands of time. But as is often the case with art versus mere fashion and spectacle, its legacy has lingered on, while many of the Need for Speed high stakes and FIFA 98s of this world have long since been forgotten. At least we have the games themselves, and we have the remakes, and the deluxe vinyl sets, and we also have rumours of bigger things yet to come. Whatever happens in the future, one thing's for sure, Panzer Dragoon Zwei is a masterpiece of the much neglected on-rail shooter genre, and to this day, one of my favourite games of all time.